All right, folks, we're here. Stand by. I got a little computer problem. It's time for the Buddy Martin Show. Better late than never.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Well, hello, welcome. Better late than never. Had a little issue going. We're back now. We're going right to our star of this segment of this show. It's not Steve Spurrier. It's Peek Wilbur, who joins us now. Better late than never. Good evening to you, Allie. How you doing?
Good, buddy. You gave me a heart attack there. All I saw was your empty chair. And
I couldn't get to the computer, but I'm good now. And thank you very much for hanging in there with me. Appreciate it very much. Always good to be on with you. One of my favorite times of the week, and we've got a special treat tonight because we've got a sit-down interview with Steve Spurrier coming up that I think you'll find interesting. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, Allie, I'm going to roll a bite of it right now, and this is Steve Spurrier talking about Georgia and why he was so motivated to beat the Bulldogs. He's frustrated about it. It all started with losing as a player to the Bulldogs. This part of the interview, which we'll play a little bit later with Peek Wilbur. Stand by. Here's Coach Spurrier talking about the Bulldogs.
Anyway, we ended the season 9-2 and won the Orange Bowl. So we had a good year, but it could have been a great year if we could have beat Georgia that day. But anyway, that was and some of those Georgia people let me know about it for about the next 30 years until I started coaching against them a little bit. So I was always trying to get even with Georgia. I don't know if I ever got even for that loss because that was a crucial one. But we beat them, a bunch of times, and we had better teams just about all the time. The one year they were favored, 92, we made a lot of key first downs with about 4 or 5 minutes left to put the game away. So that might have been my favorite win because they were actually favored. They had Garrison Hurst, and they were, I think, picked to win the division and win the SEC maybe that year also. I'm not sure.
Allie, that was one of the worst mistakes Georgia ever made, beating him as a player. He made them pay and pay and pay and pay for that. And when you look at this thing under a microscope, it's incredible. Of all the college football rivalries there are out there, nobody has beat their opponents like Spurrier beat Georgia. He was 11-1 against his team.
nobody holds a grudge like Steve Spurrier.
Wow, does he ever? Well said.
For college football, for sure.
Yeah, so it's been a while. Let's be honest about it. It hurts. Gators can't seem to get over this hump now. It's Georgia's turn. When you look back at this series, you've seen it a long time. Your family's been Gators for a long time. Your husband played against the Bulldogs. And, you know, the old Gators, and you're going back to your grandfather, their number one rivalry was the Georgia Bulldogs, you know, long before FSU, et cetera, et cetera. So it's amazing that it's amazing what happened. I don't know. Is there really a bigger rival now? Although we talk about other teams, Tennessee came in later, FSU, whatever. It's just something like beating the Bulldogs to an old Gator, right?
I almost think it's generational, right? It kind of depends on when you ask. Like Eric's teams beat Georgia 3 out of 4 times. I think my brother beat them 4 out of 4 times. Like it depends on who you ask, because there's a subsect of us who are just used to beating Georgia. So these last couple years have been the oddball for us because, I mean, it's always a good game. It's definitely a rivalry. It's a fun atmosphere to experience, but Gators expect to win, like, especially in my age bracket. So this, has been something different the last couple of years, but it's really only been, 3 years since Florida's won. So that's not that long, but it's time for us to turn the tides. It's a huge game. It's a huge rivalry. They're a huge opponent. No matter who you're playing, you always want to knock off the best teams. And Georgia right now is the best team in college football.
Yeah, and they're on top, have been for a while, 24 straight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know this well. I don't have to tell you all about this. Here's the thing about the Spurrier thing. How the sausage was made, the cheese was made, how he did this, I've not figured it out yet. I've seen all the games. I've interviewed him about it countless times. I spoke to him about him tonight, and later on we'll play that rest of the interview, is the fact, how did he beat the Georgia Bulldogs? I'll tell you one way. Here's something to think about. It starts with a guy showing up at Florida, being told by everybody, you can't have this game played anymore in Jacksonville. It's not working for the Gators. You need to go to home and get out of Jacksonville. It's not been good to us. And what did Spurrier say? Well, no, it's played in Florida on the Florida soil, in a place called the Gator Bowl. They come in a airplane. We come in a bus. It'll give me a couple of years to see how this is going to go before we start taking. We can beat them. Now, here's my question, Jelly. How could a guy like Steve Spurrier, formerly head coach at Duke, come in and make such a bold statement when he had no grounds to say that on? He just made a statement. How did and why did he say that, Allie?
I mean, I think that Steve Spurrier is probably one of the most confident people that I've ever met, but he's one of the best college football minds in the history of the game. And I don't know if he was confident enough to think that of himself when he made that statement, but I think that he values the tradition. I think that he values the rivalry and what it being in a neutral site game brings to the rivalry, because it does bring something. It's special. It's different. This is the same concept as like the Red River rivalry and things like that. This is a special game. This is not just a tough SEC opponent. And I think he helped create it into what it is today by being daggum stubborn.
Daggum stubborn. It's like Bobby Bowden. But, you're right. But here's the remarkable thing. Every great upset, every great rivalry where there's a team that wins that isn't supposed to, it starts with the belief that you can. Mm-hmm. Which is something that I don't think Gator fans have right now. If I said to you right now what's going to happen on Saturday, the odds are you say Florida's going to get beat probably by so-and-so. Why? Because we're trained to think that, because the track record. But at some point before you can win, you have to know and think that you can, and then have that resolve, that seal resolve. We talk about it all the time. Where does it come from? The confidence that he could do it came from being smart, as you say, being a great play caller, and having a certain swagger, and never backing and having the courage to say, we can be as good. Although he knew in reality he probably wasn't many times, he was. He inherited an excellent football team, he knows that, and he went out and he began winning the game against Georgia. Every great upset starts with the belief, Allie, that you think you can. It's so hard to believe that right now.
Odds are Florida does not beat Georgia on Saturday, but I do think it's possible. And I think that if it happens, it's sort of a cheat code, right? To getting a little ahead of track for Billy Napier, of getting off the hot seat, of showing that, Florida can be back. I mean, if we beat Georgia, it does not mean that we're back yet, but it means that we're trending in the right direction. But with this Georgia team, I think last year's Georgia team would beat this Georgia team by somewhere around maybe like 17 points. This team is beatable. It doesn't mean that Florida is going to go out on Saturday and beat them, but somebody is going to beat them. I don't think that they are unstoppable by any means. Now, we play like we played against Kentucky, we're going to lose. we play like we've played against, maybe Tennessee or even moments against South Carolina. South Carolina wasn't pretty, but there was zero quit in that team. They tried different things. They, with a gun to their head, they made things happen. And if that type of team shows up on Saturday, factor in the rivalry, factor in the 50-50 crowd, factor in the fact that this Georgia team isn't as good as they were last year. Crazier things have happened.
Looking back at the series, and you go back a long way, and some of those great wins. Is there one particular game or play besides Run Lindsay and the obvious ones that sticks out for you personally? Is there a game or a play or something in the Georgia or Florida Georgia series? Let's not get that mixed up. It's Florida Georgia, where we come from. Is there one that jumps off the page to you?
There's a couple. Well, first of all, you mentioned the Lindsey Scott play. Tim Groves is who was defending him, and he was a couple years younger than my dad. He owns a bar in Orlando called the Thirsty Gator. The entire thing is painted orange and blue. It's like one of my if I'm not going to be in the stadium, I want to be at Thirsty Gator watching this game. So it's funny that you say that. But so there's two, and they both involve punters. Eric had a fake punt against Georgia. Urban Meyer jokingly called it the slowest 20 yards in college football. He got the first down. They won. I have this picture that his dad took of him standing on the ledge of the stadium right in front of the band, pretending to conduct the band after the game. One of my favorite pictures. And then Chaz Henry, who was the punter after Eric, he had to fill in. Our field goal kicker was hurt. I believe it was Sturgis, but I can't remember for sure who the field goal kicker was. But whoever it was hurt. Chaz Henry had to go out to kick a game winner. That is when Todd Grantham was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. And it is ingrained in my head, him doing the throat slash to Chaz as Chaz is running out there to kick the extra point, which always just bothered me because you're a coach. Have some more class than that. But Chaz nails the game-winning field goal. He's a punter, not a kicker. Was so happy for him, so happy for his parents. It's one of the most fun moments that I remember. John Brantley beating Georgia, that's another great one on a really bad twisted ankle. Just there's a lot of good moments in that rivalry.
Yeah, and some of them not so good too. I don't know why, for many years until Spurrier came along, it seemed like there was this weird thing in the air, Halloween, full moon, weird stuff happening. I can remember games, crazy games. I can't even remember the year, it was in the 70s, when Georgia had a fumble snap on an extra point and picked it up. And I think Bobby Etter was the guy that ran it for the 2-point conversion. And they won the game like 11-10. I mean, just nutty things like that happen a lot. You could almost begin to feel it in the stadium. Here we go. It's the Ides of October. It's Florida, Georgia. Something bad's going to happen to the Gators. It's like that's how it felt for a long time. And it seemed like it always went in Georgia's favor at that point in time. But, however, things have changed. And now the pendulum has swung back again. What's that Newton's law? For every action is opposite and equal reaction. So now we've had Florida dominating, and now we have Georgia dominating. Look, this would be a monumental upset, let's say. Not as big as others, not as big as App State, winning when they did over Michigan. But this would be huge if Florida could pull this off. Now, the consensus is that with Brock Bowers being injured, there's a little something going on right there. You say, well, they got plenty. No, let me tell you something. You just don't take out a Brock Bowers without it affecting the game. And the point spreads dropped, from 23.5 to 14 or something like that. And the Georgia Bulldogs are still favored. So I don't know. Do you feel, and this is how we go, you and I travel this way, we pick and think by feel because of our, hopefully, knowledge and experience of watching this team. Do you feel there's something going on in the air here that could be real, that when they get out there on Saturday afternoon, maybe you get a pick or you get a fumble, you get something weird happening, or somebody breaks out and has a turnover, whatever. You think this is the kind of thing that's still potentially a weapon for the Florida Gators?
Yeah, I do. You mentioned Brock Bowers, and I know that people say Georgia's loaded and they have tons of weapons, and that is a true statement. However, Bowers has been like a security blanket for Carson Beck.
Yes.
He knows if he needs a first down, if he needs yardage, if he needs something, that is his go-to. So while yes, there's plenty of other weapons, there's not plenty of other weapons that he has that relationship with that he knows he can rely on no matter what. Now, does that mean that somebody doesn't emerge as that? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But that is a huge loss, regardless of how many guys you have waiting in the wings. And I think after this South Carolina game, this team felt something. We saw them play not just with purpose, because they've played with purpose every week, but with some energy, with some, they looked more prepared. There was urgency there. And I think that they saw, oh shoot, so if we do that, this is the result. We can win these close games. And I think they're going to carry that into this. Like I said, odds are Georgia wins this game, but I think there's probably close to a 40% chance that Florida could do something here. And that's a much higher percentage than I would have said at the beginning of the season.
I think you're right. And do something is the right thing to say because we're not sure what.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like a beat down. Yeah. I think Graham Mertz has been remarkable. You know about Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah.
They can score against almost anybody.
Yeah.
Can the defense stop Georgia? Well, Georgia's got some weapons over there, but right now they don't have their main weapon in Bowers. And I go back to Spurrier when he had that belief, conviction that this team could win and could win often against. He was the baddest man on the planet for the Georgia Bulldogs. I asked him in this interview, we're going to hear it a little bit. How did you feel about being called the evil genius? Which, of course, is what Georgia fans called him because he owned them. And he laughed at it. And he says, I don't mind at all. He quoted Sun Tzu about, you're supposed to be despised and disliked, etc. He was the evil genius like no other coach ever dominated any kind of rivalry. He absolutely owned the Bulldogs. He was the Bulldog Slayer, Allie.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he lost once, right? Wasn't it 11-1?
Exactly. Yep. To Jim Donnan, by the way.
Record, particularly in a rivalry, which, rivalry games generally go back and forth. That's what makes them a rivalry. So the fact that span of time was just so incredibly dominant. And even think of during Urban's time, Urban wasn't around as long as Spurrier, but even during a time of national championships, didn't have quite that record. Although I will argue, Urban made that rivalry incredible too, with his timeouts at the end and all the craziness there. Like that just added some spice to an already spicy rivalry. But he's one of the best to ever do it. And I kind of hope Billy Napier goes ahead and calls him in and is like, hey, you want to talk to the team? Right? Like, what kind of words of inspiration can you give us? He'd probably just say, to hell with Georgia, and send them on their way. But, what a treasure, right? How great is college football?
Great. Fantastic. And this is the thing about it, I'm feeling that Dan Mullen would never have done that. He just basically ignored Steve Spurrier for the most part. I know for a fact. And Steve never complained about it, but he basically disrespected Spurrier, who's right down the hall to be used as a source and never was.
Yeah.
Suddenly, in the last couple of weeks, it feels like Billy Napier has had an awakening. I mean, he's quoting Steve Spurrier. He's saying
his wife telling him.
His wife tells him, so why is he saying go throw the ball deep? And doing things like that. And actually, it feels like there's a little more unity there. Not that Spurrier can win the game for it, but why wouldn't you embrace someone like that? The all-time greatest coach against Georgia in the history of the game. Why wouldn't you? And I think maybe Billy Napier has had a little bit of an awakening. Do you think so?
I mean, it sounds like it, right? Obviously, when you talk to Spurrier, he's going to be a better source on that. But he's referenced him. He's honestly, he's almost even been kind of funny like him at press conferences, which is not something we'd seen. Right. He mentioned that his wife, asked like, hey, Spurrier says this. Should you be doing that? And, embracing where we've been to help us get to where we want to go is important in all aspects of life.
I like that. That's very good. I like that.
But particularly when that person is, right there in town with you and the biggest name to ever walk out of that university. So he'd be silly not to use all the tools at his disposal, Steve Spurrier being weapon number one.
Exactly. Now I'm going to ask you to do something. I know you have deadlines and you have kids in bed and stuff. I think we have something kind of special here in this interview with Steve Spurrier. I sat down with him and talked to him for 20 minutes. It's hard to get him to sit down. When I interviewed him for the book I did years ago, I went to Columbia, South Carolina, and I went back in the back with Steve, and we sat there for like 3 or 4 hours with Spurrier. And Jerry said, I don't remember the last time he sat down with anybody that long. His attention span's not that long. But I did get him for a solid 20 minutes to talk about just the Georgia game. If you can, I'd like you to hang if possible. Listen to a little bit of it. Come back and comment on what you're hearing, if that's okay.
I can do that.
All right, we're going to play this. And then first we'll do a quick spot from Meldon Law. Come back, and now he's going to listen to this. This is kind of special. I'm proud of this interview. Not that I was that good at it, but certainly just to have him on, to hear him talking about this, because, folks, we're seeing something that we've never seen before. So you better pay attention. In fact, I'm going to go right to the interview. We'll play the spot on Meldon later. Here's Steve Spurrier talking about how he beat Georgia. This time of year when they play football in Jacksonville, one name always pops up for especially Bulldog fans who had a nightmare on their hands for about 11, 12 years. One reason is that Steve Spurrier was the Bulldog Slayer. Steve, I want you to take it. First of all, hello, how are you? Good to see you again.
Yeah, buddy, good to be with you.
Mm-hmm. We've discussed this a few hundred times over the years, but this is what I want to focus on today. This is such a remarkable thing that you did, and as time goes on, we look back at it, and I thought, I've got to ask Steve, I know a lot of the stories, how he did this. So let's start first of all with you losing to Georgia as a senior. I was there that day, one of the most bitter defeats of your lifetime. Take us through that and tell me how much, if anything, it had to do with how you ended up owning Georgia when you coached against them.
I don't know if it had that much to do with us having better teams than them through the 90s and playing better than them. That's why we won 11 out of 12, to tell you the truth. But our senior year here, we were 5-0 in conference play, only played 6. So we played Georgia, for the SEC championship, and they beat us. They beat us in the second half, got after us pretty good. And anyway, we ended the season 9-2 and won the Orange Bowl. So we had a good year, but it could have been a great year if we could have beat Georgia that day. But anyway, that was and some of those Georgia people let me know about it for about the next 30 years until I started coaching against them a little bit. So I was always trying to get even with Georgia. I don't know if I ever got even for that loss because that was a crucial one. But we beat them, a bunch of times, and we had better teams just about all the time. The one year they were favored, 92, we made a lot of key first downs with about 4 or 5 minutes left to put the game away. So that might have been my favorite win because they were actually favored. They had Garrison Hirsch, and they were, I think, picked to win the division and win the SEC maybe that year also. I'm not sure. But anyway, it was always a fun game in Jacksonville, and we were always ready to play these guys.
But when you came to Florida from Duke, there were certain people who tried to talk you out of having that game in Jacksonville. And I remember the exact quote, and I'll let you give it to me, about why you wanted to keep it in Jacksonville. I hate to think about the fact if it had been moved. So talk about that conversation and why you were so dogmatic about, no, let's play the game in Jacksonville.
We had lost the last 15 out of 20 in 1990. In the 70s and 80s, they won 15 of the 20. And a few of the sort of high administrative people said, Steve, we need to go home and home with Georgia. We can't beat them in Jacksonville. I don't know what it is. Seems like there's a curse in that stadium, and they just about always win. And I said, well, give me 3 or 4 years to see if we can't win in Jacksonville. Because, Jacksonville's in the state of Florida. It's not in Georgia. We get on a bus to go over there, just like we get on a bus from Williston. We stayed in Williston and come to Gainesville for our games the night before the game. And I said, they got to get on an airplane, fly down here. It's in a stadium called the Gator Bowl. And that's got to be to our advantage, isn't it? I said, what we got going right now is the same as if we played this game every year in Atlanta, Georgia, in a stadium called the Bulldog Bowl. Now, how would we feel about doing that? Oh, that doesn't make sense, everybody said. I said, well, they're coming down here kicking our tails, and that's what we got going for us. So let's start believing we got something good going for us and take advantage of it. So we won 7 in a row. But, again, our teams were better than theirs, and maybe we were a little bit more ready to play. I'm not sure. But we enjoyed going to Jacksonville to play that game.
But Steve, there were people who said that you were not better than them. I remember one specific article in the Red and Black that said they had better players than you did. They recruited great, and I think you reminded them of that after you beat them, didn't you?
Yeah, I think that was 91 or 2, something like that.
Great golf.
92 or 93, something like that. Well, the recruiting rankings, we were like 5th. Going into 90, 91, something like that, according to the recruiting rankings. And Georgia, I think, was they're in the top 2 or 3. According to their magazine, they were number 1. But it doesn't always have to do with recruiting and all that. It's, the team that's best prepared and plays the best going to win the game. So, yeah, I did say something about that one time because every time Georgia used to play us, and Vince Dooley was the best at it. He was a master at making the other team feel real good about playing Georgia. He would always say they're bigger and stronger and faster than us. And even some of their players, after they beat us, they would say, the Gators are bigger and stronger and faster than we are, but we want it more than they do. Simple as that. So I saw those articles, and our teams heard the Georgia players, how they talked about us after they had beaten us. So maybe that added a little bit of inspiration to our players. I'm not sure. But anyway, it was a game that we looked forward, and generally we played very well, except for that one year that we got beat. We had a bad game, and they had a really good game. Simple as that.
Well, Shane Matthews said when I talked to him, if you talk to Coach, he'll say we coach better and play better. And that's exactly what you said, and you did. But still, 11-1 in a major rivalry. I can't imagine that happened in Texas and Oklahoma. Ohio State, Michigan happened there. In fact, as long as you brought it up, you were 11. I think Urban was 5-1, I believe. Mm-hmm. So you guys collectively were 16-2 against Georgia, now the dominant program in college football. I mean, you begin to appreciate that, but you don't have it anymore, right? So what's it going to take for this program to get back, at least to be competitive? Because Urban Meyer said you ruined this series. He did it on this show. He said, Steve Spurrier ruined it. I hated that game because there was so much pressure because we had to win that game. He said later on I appreciated it, but he said at that time I hated it because Steve Spurrier dominated that series. So you and Urban were 16-2 against these guys, unheard of. Now they got to get it back to where they're competitive, and they're going to try to do that Saturday. I've heard some of your comments about it. Talk to me about at least being open to the idea that you can compete and win a game. Don't you have to start with that, Coach?
Yeah, I think our team, if we're really sort of, I think, on the way to becoming a good team here at Florida now. Obviously, the win at South Carolina a couple of weeks ago should build confidence and help in our belief that we can certainly play with Georgia. And if we play and coach, you're right. I like to say play and coach better than they do. We'll have a chance. They are the number 1 team in the country, pretty big favorite, I guess. But when you look at 11 guys against 11 guys, our players are as big as they are, maybe bigger. I don't know, but it's similar athletes going at it. So again, the team that plays without mistakes and makes some big plays, coaches that have an excellent coaching game, it does all go together. That team should be the winner. So that's what I think Billy Napier and his coaching staff plan to do. We plan to have a heck of a game coaching and playing.
Had a conversation last night with a colleague about how you beat Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, you got to run the football against Georgia. I don't know that I believe that. I think you got to run the ball against everybody. But to me, what your teams did was you loved to throw the ball on first down a lot. And it worked out really well when you did that. And to me, it seems like the mentality of trying to go beat Georgia physically is not the way to go. You got a good passing team. Chuck it. Put it over their heads. You always said run around them, throw it over their heads. Would that work good for Billy Napier?
I think you have to do both. I've always believed there's a good play for every defense, and there's a good defense for every play. So as a coach, offensive coach, you're trying to get the best play on against the defense, whether it be a run or a pass. And, of course, the defense is trying to have the best defensive call they have. So it does come down to coaching a lot. You know, that sometimes we'd run a play and I said, that play doesn't have a chance. That was a bad call. So what we did, we allowed the quarterback to audible a lot. Shane and Danny and Terry Dean and Rex and Jesse and all those guys, if a play didn't have a chance, we tried to check to one that did. And we probably audible at the line of scrimmage more than most any team in the country back in those days. Sometimes it's awfully loud, so you have to use hand signals and so forth. But again, run, pass, we did both. I think Eric Rat ran the ball 35 times that rainy day way back 30 years ago, 93 game. And that was key probably to winning that game. But I just always believe you need to do both. If the other team's got 8, 9 guys on the line of scrimmage, you better be able to pass. So, and if they're defending with 8 or 9 guys, you better be able to run. Simple as that.
Seems to me, Steve, when I saw every one of your games back then, you usually try to light it up the first half, get ahead of the game, and then you would really resort to a running game if you were up by 2, 3 touchdowns in the second half. I remember seeing Eric Rett take handoff after handoff after handoff in the second half, and you beat teams that way. And talk about how, although your run-pass ratio was balanced, if you took first half and the second half, way more passes in the first half.
Yeah, we did try to come out fast a lot of games. Sun Tzu, his book In the Art of War, he said if you're in a fight, can't mediate or discuss it any further. He said, hit first, hit hard, and hit often. So I remember one year Georgia had the wrestler who had played there. What was his name? Remember him?
Ric Flair? Was it Ric Flair? No, Florida. No. Oh, shoot. I can't think of it. Anyway, I know you're talking about.
Last name's not Golden or something. But anyway, he gave the pep talk to the Georgia team for the game. And they come roaring out for the game and everything. And we had them 21-0 in the first quarter. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was 98 or 99, 98, I want to say. And somebody asked him, what happened to that pep talk? And he said, oh, damn, Gators came out and hit us hard, hit us fast. And we were down 21-0 before we knew what was going on. But anyway, that was a compliment by that guy. That he went on to become a pro wrestler.
Yeah,
but anyway, we tried to do that a lot. But sometimes, it doesn't work out that way. So then, you do whatever you think to move the ball is what we try to do.
Teams, and Shane's mentioned this a couple of times, as you know, I do shows with him every week. You have to learn to play from the lead, too. When you get the lead, you got to know how to play from it. Coming from back, like the Gators did a couple of weeks ago, is great. But you got to learn how to play from the lead. So you taught your teams that. Let's get to the coaching part for a second. You had some great battles with the Georgia coaches. Poor Ray Goff, who knows where he is now, beat him like a drum. And then you had Mark Richt. Talk about your competition against the Georgia coaches who you dominated and what you recall about your relationship with those guys.
Yeah, I think Jim Donnan was after.
Jim Donnan,
Ray Goff, and then Rick came in. I think only one game or so that last year. But you know what, buddy? We didn't really pay a lot of attention to who the coach was on the other team. We just tried to look at what their defense did and what their offense do and their special teams and put a plan together for that. I'm often asked about what coach you had the most trouble with, or this, that, and the other. And I said, if you ask our players half the time, I don't think they even knew the name of the head coach on the other team because during the week we didn't really talk about their coaches much at all.
You didn't. And Jim Don, I think, was the guy that beat you, right?
Yeah, he won
The
that
one
one in
guy,
97. Yeah, that was we put all of our bad plays in that one game, and Georgia had a good game. Champ Bailey and those guys, I think it beat us 37-17, and I think they got so excited that Tennessee beat them the next week, and Tennessee ended up winning the division that year.
Hey, Coach, talk about the game in Athens, the 52-27 beatdown. There are lots of stories about that game. Huge for you to go in there and win. Ray Graves told me something one time, and I asked you about it, and you never did confirm or deny it happened. And Ray Graves told me, Steve called me after the game and said, Coach, we hung 50 on it for you. And, well, that was true or not, but that was, that was certainly something that sounded like it would happen. Did you or didn't you?
You know, I could have. I don't know if I did or not, but I may have.
Yeah.
Lawson Holland, one of our assistant coaches, we were on the bus going from Atlanta to Athens, and he's looking at the program or something. He said, Coach, no one has ever scored 50 between the hedges, is what they call their stadium there, their field, at Georgia, at their stadium. So I said, Lawson, let's worry about winning the dang game first. We'll worry about all that down the road. So sure enough, we're up 45-17 with about 2.5, 3 minutes. We got all of our backups in there. Eric Kressler was in at quarterback. Travis McGriff, who caught the last little touchdown to get us 50, was in there. So we called some plays to score a touchdown, and we went down the field, and Kressler threw Travis McGriff a touchdown. There was a good minute and something left, I think. So, yeah, we did try to score 50. I'm not going to say it happened accidentally, but we did not call timeout to just keep firing at the end zone. To me, I thought that was something you should not do. It's called timeout. But in basketball, if you got the backups in, you don't tell them don't shoot. Just go down there and let 24-second clock run out and give that team the ball. You don't do that. And in baseball, you don't go up until you got to strike out because we're beating them 12-1 or something in the last inning. No, you play the game out. But in football, for some reason, people think if you got a pretty good lead, you're just supposed to let the clock run out, which sometimes we do, but other times let your backup players play and let them try to score. That's just the way I looked at it.
Your friend Urban Meyer did call timeout after he got beat the year before and the team stormed the field. Remember? They came down there and wanted a fist fight, and Georgia beat them up, and Urban stewed about it the whole off season. And people asked him, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He wouldn't tell them. But when they got ahead late in the game, they got up and they ran the ball. Moody ran the ball for big gains. He called timeout and got the ball, ran it again for first time. He called timeout. And he ran it again, and he tried to call timeout, and the ref said, you don't have any more timeouts, Coach. You used them all up. He wanted to look at that scoreboard and say, take a look at this. This is what revenge looks like. So we'll see.
That was a little payback for what they had done.
Yeah.
Storming the field. They actually won that game, didn't they?
They did.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, Steve, when you look back, and I'll let you go with this, and thanks for your time today, by the way. Hope to see you in the restaurant soon. I know things are going well there. Freddie Weavy doing a great job at Spurrier's Grand Grill. I passed by yesterday, looked at it. Looks great. If you haven't been, you need to go. It's special. I'm going to try that pork chop. I saw you said the pork chop was great. So next time I'm going to go and I'm going to have that. It's a great place. So when you look back on this whole big old thing with Georgia and what you've done in this series, what's the thing that you're proudest of?
Oh, I am the winningest coach over Georgia, by the way, and I got it coaching at South Carolina, and we beat them 38-35 in a game, 2000, I think it was 14 maybe, 13 or 14 that year. So I don't know if I'm even with them yet or not for beating us my senior year. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to win 16 games against the Bulldogs. I don't know who's in second place right now. Do you?
No.
They don't play Alabama every year, so it
Right.
can't be Saban or Bear Bryant. So I don't know. Maybe the Auburn coach, Chuck Jordan, was,
could be
15. Only beat him by one. But I don't know who's third place, I guess I should say. But it's a good game in Jacksonville. They get half the tickets, we get half. And I think this is going to be a heck of a game. I think the fans will get their money's worth this Saturday.
Steve, when they call you evil genius, you take it as a compliment or do you take it as insult?
Oh, certainly a compliment. Sun Tzu, in his book, The Art of War, he says if your enemies have nothing bad to say about you, then you have done nothing to cause them discomfort. So if I did cause the Bulldogs some discomfort back in those days, that's what you're supposed to do if you're a head football coach.
So on behalf of the Gator Nation, since you didn't say it, I'll say it. You did even the score for losing your senior year, and thank you for what you did. Gator fans may have been down. They always got the fact they can hang on to is that when Steve Spurrier coached his team, they lost one time. Urban Meyer, one time. You guys own the Georgia Bulldogs for then. Let's see what the trend's going to be, Coach, starting Saturday.
Yeah, it could be a heck of a game. I really think it's going to be a close one, and hopefully we can make a play. Mertz, Pearsall, maybe make a play at the end. We'll just have to find out if it is similar to the game at South Carolina.
Coach, 40 start. All right, there you go, Alec. Thanks for hanging on. I just thought that was vintage Spurrier. I don't know what parts you liked about it. He didn't want to take the credit, but he did, in fact, make it right after losing that game. What stuck out in that interview about what Steve Spurrier said about beating the Bulldogs?
Well, so I took some notes during this.
I saw that, yeah.
Spurrier mind he has a mind like a steel trap. The fact that he can just throw out dates and names and plays and things like that will never not blow my mind. He's watched so much football, but he remembers so much of it. It's crazy. I thought it was interesting. He talked about using outside noise as motivation. And I think that that's kind of what started his run with Georgia. And I think that that's something that this UF team in particular could and should harness. I mean, just think about Vegas predicting 5.5 wins. Think about Graham Mertz being ranked 14 out of 14 SEC quarterbacks. The amount of predictions that really were very negative going into the season about this team, I think that makes it easy to motivate using a us versus the world mentality. Urban Meyer also did that really well when we were in the 2006 national championship game. I think that that's something they could definitely use. I did, when he talked about starting fast and he talked about we have to play and coach better. And, we have to call a good game. We have to call a near perfect game. We've got to play a near perfect game. He is humble, but so confident at the same time, which is just an interesting kind of juxtaposition, I feel like, because he doesn't want the credit, but he gets the credit, right? He has to get the credit. He's the winningest coach against Georgia, which he is very proud of that moment.
Yes.
He mentioned that, and rightfully so. But I think it should give this current Gators team so much confidence that Steve Spurrier is sitting here saying, hey, I think it's going to be a close one. I think they could pull it out. If we get some plays there at the end, we could win this game. He's not counting them out. He thinks they have what it takes. And if one of the winningest coaches in college football, one of the best college football minds in the history of the game thinks you can do it, who cares what ESPN says,
Very well said. And you get back to that point we said, at some point when you're going to start winning, you got to not just think it, you got to have the conviction that you can and will win the game.
Yes.
And that's hard to get these days. If there's anything to be learned from that interview, that steel resolve Spurrier had. Again, what's faith? Faith is believing in something that you cannot really see. Mm-hmm. Steve Spurrier had faith he could beat the Bulldogs, and he beat the crap out of them for all those years. Yeah. So it's such an important thing, and you're right. If they are closer, I don't know. Maybe we're crazy. We think there's a little something here going on, and this is what a wonderful win this would be for this program. Because one of the things about the Spurrier era, he not only won, he completely reversed the momentum, turned it on its head, and made it his game. So something to be learned from that for sure, Allie.
Oh, for sure. And this win would be monumental. It would easily be the best win in the Napier era, but it really would set this team just on a path for stability. You know, Billy Napier's not going anywhere. They beat Georgia. These recruits aren't going anywhere if they beat Georgia. This is a huge stepping stone in the right direction if it's something that they can do.
It would have to be a top 5
of
all time. And this because of where it comes and the scale of things, that it's been a long time, and that conviction is very hard to find. Often it takes 1 or 2 people to believe that. Now you got to remember sometimes who you are, where you come from, and what's possible.
I always think about when Florida beat LSU. I want to say it was 2004. They were the number 1 team in the country. It was in Baton Rouge. We had 0 shot. I think we were unranked. Zook was the coach, and we left Baton Rouge with a win. It rained. It was muddy. It was crazy, and Florida pulled it off. It would be one of those type of wins if they could do it, but it is not out of the realm of possibilities. And again, I'm not sitting here saying Florida's for sure beating Georgia, but this is possible.
I so appreciate you staying through with me on this to get your thoughts before and after the interview. Love having you on the program, and you bring so much to this business, and I'm extremely proud of what you've done. With your work. I mean, how you do it. I'd heard of Superwoman, and I mean, the fact that you're a big in your family person, you have 2 sets of twins, and you have a big toddler in Eric, and and that you do such a fantastic job, Allie. I'm so proud of you, and I also love being on this program, and our fans, our listeners, love to see you on, and you can see the comments, be a part of that. So thank you so much. I'm sorry about our late arrival tonight. We had a few issues to deal with, but thank you for saving the show, Allie, bailing us out once again.
No. Thank you for having me. This is super fun, and it's very neat to get to do this on a regular basis with somebody that I grew up reading, that I consider, I consider you Florida athletics, and so this is a really cool thing for me too.
Thank you. Tell folks just a little bit about what's happening in the show. I mean, you're taking off. Your numbers are off the charts. You're now everybody's favorite guest co-host and guest. You're on shows all over the planet. Tell me about what it's like for you, what the show has done. How have you done this, Allie?
I think that there was maybe a little bit of an opening for some kind of short form Gator content, and didn't have a whole lot of free time, but had a little bit of free time. And this is, Florida athletics is a part of me. It's something I grew up loving and always wanting as a part of my life. And, it's something neat to be able to show my kids too. I'm doing the Great American Teach-In in a couple weeks, and I'm talking to my kids about YouTube, which is, I would never have guessed that a couple of, years ago, but it's been cool. It is a lot of work. I do this a lot late at night so that my kids are asleep and it doesn't take away from them. But it's been really fun. It's been fun to connect with guys that we went to college with, that Eric played with, or guys that I used to watch as a child. I have a video that's going to come out later this week. I've asked former players that we know to send me a little clip, and we're putting it together, and it'll come out on Friday, kind of about Georgia. I'm super excited about that. But it's been fun. Florida athletics is fun. It's neat to be able to tell the stories about what goes on. It's neat to follow recruiting, and it's always better when we win, though. So hopefully that'll happen.
About it. Hey, speaking of recruits, LJ McCray, wow, what a get!
Yeah. It was a huge pickup, and it's such an interesting recruitment to watch, because the couple of people within our program that I talked to have been confident that he was coming to Gainesville for a long time. And all through the week leading up, where, social media was saying, okay, he's backed off of Florida. Now it's between Florida State and Georgia, or Auburn's in the mix, but Florida's distanced themselves. They're a third or a fourth and different. And Florida kept saying to me that, like, our sources in there, No, he's going to be a Gator. He's going to be a Gator. So I don't know what gave Florida State and Georgia so much confidence that he was going there. But I'm telling you what, 10 minutes before, I had people at Florida State texting me like, he's going to Florida State, right? So I thought that was such a fun one, right? It was one of those ones that we truly didn't really know till we knew, which is not common these days, right? A lot of times they have made comments to other people and it's leaked, or, just different things have happened. There's never really any true surprises in recruiting. But this one, I think, really did surprise a lot of people. And what a massive pickup in an area of need.
Massive. Even the people that don't follow recruiting understand that. You'll get those kind of 5 stars and that high a ranking of a player very often. And now you have to leverage them. This guy could be I don't know exactly where he's going to play. I don't know what you've heard, but wherever he plays, he's going to be special.
Yeah, he's played all over the D-line in high school, so I would assume it would kind of depend on when he gets here and they get him into the strength program, whether they use him at DN or they use him at D-tackle. But he really has played kind of all the way across the board on the line. And I think that for Florida to be dominant, they've got to recruit well at home. Daytona Beach Mainland is the closest to Gainesville out of any of the major schools in the state. So it's one of those things where it is so important to win those recruiting battles that are in your own backyard. And this is one of the ones where they went up against some big dogs. Georgia wanted him. And, I know we consider Florida State the little brother, but Florida State has a very good program right now. They're a top 5 team in the country. They wanted him. Miami wanted him, and Miami, from what I've heard, threw lots of money his direction, and he still didn't end up at Miami. So I think that this is a feather in the cap for Napier. Last year, it was important to have a hat on the table, and it was okay if they didn't pick your hat, but you were in the conversation with some of the big dogs. But I think now you are beating the big dogs, and that was kind of the next step for Billy Napier, not just a hat on the table, be the one that's picked up. And that's what he's done for this 2024 class.
I'll compliment you again. Not only do you follow recruiting closely, but you also are aware of what's going on with the program. The players, the game, the strategy, whatever. I can sense an excitement in your voice tonight. I've not heard maybe ever.
It's trending in the right direction. I think that there's a lot of people that felt like, okay, this class we have commitments from over the summer won't stick when Florida doesn't do well during the season. Here we are sitting at 5-2, which is probably a best case scenario for this team, given what the schedule was, the first half of the schedule. And not only has this class stayed together, but they're still picking kids up. Good kids, 5-star kids. This is one of probably top 5 classes that Florida's ever brought in if they all sign. And I think they will. I think they'll all sign. And, Napier can get, let's say, 2 more wins out of the next couple of games. He will be sitting at 7-5, and he'll have the consensus top 3 class in the country. It's hard to ask for more than that.
It is. And I must say, we haven't talked about this very often, but a nicer guy you couldn't have than Billy Napier coaching his team. Now, I don't always agree with his strategy. Sometimes people think he didn't have enough energy, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is, it seems like it would only be justice if this guy turned the program back around, doesn't it?
I think that when you're a football coach, part of your responsibility is taking boys and turning them into men, being a leader that they can be proud of, a leader that's an example for them, so that when they leave the program, most of them don't play in the NFL, right? But lots of them become fathers, lots of them go out to the workforce, lots of them become contributing members to society in other ways. And a lot of that is shaped by the person that you spend the most time with. And those are your football coaches when you're in college. So, nice guys don't get to keep their jobs if they don't win. But it sure is sweeter when your head coach is a nice guy. It makes it easier to root for those wins. And I think Billy Napier is a great guy, a good person, a good CEO, somebody these players can all look up to. And I want to see him to succeed, because this is the type of person I want leading our program.
You do. And you think about some of the problems that McElwain went through with all the issues of credit card. All right, I can't let you go, because I hear your excitement in your voice, yet also know it tempers it with you have football intelligence. Give me a pick on this game.
Oh, this is a hard one. I think Georgia wins 27-24, but I think Florida keeps it close, and I think that there's some building blocks out of it.
And that would be okay, wouldn't it?
It would. You know what? If you don't go out there and get embarrassed, if you're in this game in the third quarter, that's a win in my book. And I'm not a moral victories type of.
No, it's not a moral victory. It's about progress.
Yes, and progress isn't always linear. But you know what? You play Georgia close, that's progress.
Yeah. Great stuff from Allie. Don't forget her podcast. Give me the name of the program. Peek of the Gators, Allie. It comes on.
Football, yeah.
I'm sorry. I've done this 1,000 times. I can't remember the exact name of it. But and you're on pretty regularly. I mean, you're on 3 and 4 nights a week, Allie.
At least, yeah. We're trying to have this week. We'll probably have 5 or 6 videos out. We try and get lots. We had Ben Troop on this past week, which was neat. We had who else do we have? We've had Crane from Crane and Company. That was fun. That was interesting. Got some more exciting stuff coming down the pipeline the rest of the week for Florida, Georgia. So it's gonna be a fun week.
All right, you'll make me a promise right now that at some point soon you will write an article for Gatorbait. Okay?
Yes, I promise. I will.
I know you got it in your blood. I mean, you have that writing gene within you. I can tell by the way you do what you do. So I'd be thrilled to have an article on even your whole family or heritage, whatever, sometime before this football season's over, will you?
All right. I promise. I'll work on that.
Great, Allie. Thank you so much for bailing me out tonight. Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thanks.
Enjoy the game. And coming up, by the way, we do have another interview here with Tony Barnhart, who has observed Steve Spurrier all these years, who comments about what he thinks Spurrier did and how important it was. So stay tuned with that. Allie, thank you. Have a good night. All right?
Bye.
All right, we're going to get to our sponsors at some point tonight. Love Allie having her on. So let's do this. Let's roll the spot, and we will come back and talk more to you with Tony Barnhart and what he says about this. Jeffrey Meldon. Jeffrey, you do a show where you get asked a lot of questions. I've got one for you right now, okay, regarding how do you know whether your case is being handled right and what to do about it. In medicine, you can get a second opinion if you're not satisfied with the doctor's opinion that they have. And do you have that in law? Can you do that with lawyers?
Yeah, buddy. As a matter of fact, we get quite a few calls from folks that have signed up, particularly with the big box law firms, that they do a hell of a good job of putting ads on TV. But after that, they don't really measure up to the way we try to create a client experience that's outstanding. And we're always willing to review a case and give a second opinion, just like with a doctor, because not all law firms are created equal.
I guess that's the normal thing. Just go to Meldon Law, Google it, and find out, and just give them a call. And like you say, if you come in, you get to see a Meldon. You know, this is something we do almost every year. My friend Tony Barnhart is conceded to slum a little bit today and come back on the program. It's always great to see you, Tony. How you doing?
I'm doing well, buddy. I'm down here at my fraternity brother has a place called in Shellman's Bluff is the place, a little fishing hamlet, very low key. And we came in earlier this week, and we're going to be joined by another fraternity brother today, and then tomorrow we head down to Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra to be precise, and we will be. We'll be doing that and celebrating.
It's a ritual for you. We've gone over it every year. What a wonderful thing. And we made this game ever be played in Jacksonville, although we know it won't be. But nonetheless, today I want to focus on somebody you know pretty well and someone we just heard from on this show. And I think we can put it in context to say in all the rivalries in college football, all of them, nobody has dominated a rivalry like Steve Spurrier did for 12 years. All but 1 year when he was at Florida. It's an amazing story.
Well, it is. And I've said this many, many times over the years. For all of the things that Coach Spurrier accomplished as the coach of the Gators for 12 years, to me, 6 SEC championships, 7 if you ask him, 7 SEC championships, national championship, all this recognition. The thing that he did to me that was the most impressive is he completely reversed the psychology of the Florida-Georgia series, okay? because you'll remember when Coach Spurrier got there, they were talking to him about, oh, we need to move the game to campus. We need to do this. And Spurrier went, why should we move the game to campus? It's an hour away from our campus. It's played in the Gator Bowl. Why should we change? We shouldn't. He knew. And so to me, and Georgia, and everybody said, well, we can't beat Georgia and Jacksonville. They have an inherited advantage. And Spurrier went, that's silly. That's silly. And the fact that he was able to, and then it got to the point where Georgia said, we can't win down here in Jacksonville. We got to move the game to campus or to move it to Atlanta or something like that because we can't win down there anymore. So for him to completely reverse the psychology of that series was absolutely one of the greatest accomplishments he had as the head coach of the Gators.
And I think he would tell you the same thing if he was honest about it. It had a lot to do with the fact, and he's never really confessed this, although he talked about it some in the interview tonight, is what really gave him the drive and the ambition of that is that 1966 game.
No question.
I was there for that game when Georgia came in. They were ranked, I think, 5th in the country, and they sacked him. And we know all the characters of that game and the things that happened. Florida, the most unfortunate, painful loss for a long time. Mm-hmm. Georgia beat Steve Spurrier's best team and a chance to win the SEC. He never forgot that, Tony.
No, that was a great team. That was Vince Dooley's first SEC championship team.
Jake Scott,
Jake Scott, Billy Payne, all those guys were on that team, and Florida played well early, but Georgia got the momentum in the second half and just pounded. I mean, literally pounded Steve Spurrier in that second half.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you as an observer. I know you didn't see all the games, but you're a student of the game, and And I've asked him this question. I've never really quite gotten an answer. How did he do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, he did it with a lot of really good players. And you go back and look at those Florida teams and all the NFL talent that was there. But secondly, I think when I say the psychology was reversed, that works both ways. The psychology was reversed, and Florida thought they were going to win all the time, and Georgia didn't think they could win. And Georgia went into those games. Spurrier, you and I have had this conversation. Steve Spurrier was worth at least a touchdown in every game, just for something he would do, a call that he would make. And that gave Florida an advantage. And so it was an incredible thing to watch. And only one won, 1997. We'll never forget that game.
Yeah.
But just to go 12-1, to go 11-1 against.
And Jim Donnan, by the way, got it.
Yeah, Jim Donnan got it. Well, as an old newspaper guy, you'll appreciate this. We had a game plan set up. I was still working for the AJC, and I was sort of in charge of all the writers up there and all that. And then at halftime, when things were rocking along, I called back to the office in Atlanta and says, "Men, we're going to have a plan B because Georgia's going to win this game." I said, "Okay." So we started over with our game plan. So
yeah, and I want to talk to you some deep psychology on something as a student of the game. Think about this: conviction, belief, all the things that we talk about among coaches and players. Coaches getting players to buy in, winning games you shouldn't win. There has to be some kind of faith-based thing regarding you have to believe something that you don't really see. And how could a guy who had come in with no evidence, no proof that he could do this, walk in and tell them, "No, we're not moving the game. We're going to play the game right where it is. We can win there." Like, what? What are you talking about? What do you base that on? He had to have some kind of really deep conviction, Tony, that he was going to do this.
Sure. He did have it. He did. He knew what he could do. He knew that he didn't need to move the game. He knew he could call ball plays with the best of them. And also, and he's told you this story, and he's told it to me. He inherited a really talented roster at Florida.
He did.
And he will readily admit that he had a lot of really, really good players. That's why he resented it so much when they took away the 1990 SEC championship, because that team was talented and deserved it. And so
he still counts it, by the way.
Listen. I introduced him in a public setting during the SEC championship game on the 25th anniversary, and I said, "Steve Spurrier's won 6 conference championships, 7, Tony." That's right, Coach. Forgive me, 7.
That's him.
And so, yeah. And Steve Spurrier, as you know, as better than anybody, has an absolute supreme confidence in his ability to do things once he puts his mind to it. And he knew I don't know if he knew he was going to go 11-1, but he knew that Georgia was not going to dominate the rivalry anymore. He did know that, I promise you.
Yeah, and of course Georgia has it totally their way now. This is why it's a lesson learned for Billy Napier. Think about what he had to do. He came in with no evidence saying, we're going to keep the game, we're going to win the game, we're going to reverse. And this is the kind of belief that a guy like Napier needs to instill, if it's possible, in his players now. And, and Steve will say today, one reason he got the job was his little Duke team beat Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
They had no chance. They didn't even have a winning record. They beat powerful Clemson. Is something about that part of it, something, conviction, belief, whatever, that makes great teams, Tony, that galvanizes people together.
Well, just from talking to players, Florida players over the years, it's really not complicated. They say, look, we got players, but we got that guy, Spurrier, and that guy's worth a lot. And you know what? We've got him, and you don't. And at some point during a game, he's going to make a call, or he's going to make a decision that's going to put us in position to win. And 11 out of 12 years, he did that. I tell you the other thing, buddy, about the 97 game where Georgia finally won. We were down in the tunnel walking to the interview rooms, and Coach Spurrier walked right past me, and he just looked at him. He said, Tony, they just beat us. No excuses. They just beat us. And that was Coach Spurrier. He knew
never any excuses.
He knew that Georgia had the better team. That particular day, Georgia had the better team.
And that's exactly what he said. They were better than us that day. And he didn't make any excuses. Well, it's going to be interesting. We got about a minute left, and we know what the experts say on the game, and it looks like Georgia's going to have its way again. But, again, we go back to that thing that stuff happens in football. We've seen it happen. The Lions dropped a lot since Brock Bowers. I don't know how that will affect the game. Carson Beck is still a good player. There'll be names of people surfacing that we hadn't thought of. But when Carson Beck's back there looking for a bailout on 3rd and 6, and Brock Bowers is not there, I asked some coaches about that, and Urban Meyer said absolutely that's a factor. That is a factor for a quarterback.
Sure.
So I don't know what we can measure. Georgia's got so many great players. The kid you told me about's behind him, is it Delp? Is that his name?
Oscar Delp. Yep.
And 5-star. But it's not just about the 5-star. It's about playing together. And me, in my mind, Brock Bowers was the ultimate team player. He was just that guy. So I don't know if that's going to lead to anything or not, Tony. Just out of curiosity, how do you see this game playing out?
Well, as far as the bailout guy now, the bailout guy, and strictly in my opinion for Georgia, becomes Ladd McConkey. McConkey is a guy who he runs incredible routes. He catches everything. And when Carson Beck is looking for a bailout guy, he's the guy. Okay. And so we'll see how. But you know what? If I know it, Florida knows it. So let's see what happened. I think Georgia overall, the depth of their talent, because they've recruited so well, is going to be a factor. And if Carson Beck has gotten better and better and better each game. And he's playing with a whole lot of confidence. And they'll see. I always think in games like this, the key is for Florida, the underdog team, to do something early, fairly dramatic. Get on top, make them come from behind, and spend a lot of their time. But what you can't do is just allow Georgia to line up and run the ball, which they have not done all that well. So keep a lot of pressure on the quarterback and do something dramatic on defense to get the lead and make Georgia start coming from behind.
You got a turnover. You got to have a turnover. Here's the thing: you can't be coming into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 all against Georgia. You will not do that. That's Pick City if that happens. So, well, let's hope it's a competitive game again. That'll be good. And this great rivalry needs to get back where it was. I think Georgia's the best team in the country. I'm not buying Michigan, but I don't know. That's me. I'm an SEC guy, a little down year. So I know you know the team well. What is the belief around the program? They still think that Georgia is the number 1 team in the country?
Their attitude is we're number 1 until somebody beats us and says we're not number 1. and which I understand.
I agree with that.
And so what's going to be interesting is if Georgia keeps winning, and the first set of rankings come out on October 21st, the college football playoff rankings. Where is Georgia? Is Georgia 1? Where are they? And I think that's going to be kind of fascinating as well. But now my attitude about Georgia is I had them number 1 in the preseason, and I've kept them number 1 as long as they're winning.
Yeah, can't argue with that. The great Tony Barnhart, always good to talk to him anytime, especially this week with that great Florida, Georgia, or as they say up there, Georgia, Florida series. Can't wait till Saturday. Let's hope it's a competitive game and fun to watch and cover.
Well, you'd be proud of me because I did call it the Florida Georgia game the other day when I was around some Gators. So you would have been proud of me.
You slipped up. Tony, you're a very fair guy. Listen, buddy, have a good one. Hope to see you Saturday. All right.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Enjoy your time with your friends. Thank you. All right, the great Tony Barnhart. Listen, he may be a bulldog, as some have said. He's a fair guy, and I've always enjoyed his commentary. All right, before we wrap it up and give you our pick, let me tell you about Titan MRI, our fine sponsors. Titan MRI is worth a short drive to Gainesville. No insurance is no problem. You pay with cash or card. Same-day scheduling available. You start feeling better today because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville offices from Ocala, Marion County, the villages all over. That's TitanMRI.com. All right, before we tell you about RunStar, let me wrap up my thoughts here. Really enjoyed this show. Sorry we were late getting to you tonight, but I tell you what, it's hard to beat the combination of these three people we had tonight when it comes to a game like this. Peek Wilbur is phenomenal. She is a rising star in this business. I had the good fortune to work with some great talent, young people. She is really becoming a star. I love her commentary. I love her enthusiasm. I love her work ethic is fantastic. So thank you, Allie, once again for your contributions tonight. What can you say about the HBC? I mean, when you look back on it, 100 years from now, they say, let's see. Back then, Florida was beating Georgia. Who was this guy, Steve Spurrier? How did he do it? It's amazing what he has done. And he was really good tonight, candid. I appreciate that. And, of course, the great Tony Barnhart is always good to have on. So, yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you for the show. Excuse me. Sorry about getting there late tonight, but we had a little hole up. Good to go now, and thank you for your patience. Before we wrap it up and give you our pick, let me tell you about RunStar Medical Research. The reputation is a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility. RunStar Medical Research brings cutting-edge clinical research trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's, dementia, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, and many other things that affect us in this area. Since its inception in 1998, RunStar has participated in more than 700 clinical trials, continues to partner with prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry. I need to go to RunStar. Anyway, so these folks are great. They make it better. They're trying to help us improve our health. If you want to be a part of these clinical trials, go to RunStar.net and see how you can do that. If you qualify, you could be compensated for time and travel. So thank you to RunStar. All right, my pick. I've tried to think hard about this game this weekend. When I come down the side, I do think there will be some opportunities that Florida could have to win this game. Can they cash them in? I do not know. I'm sorry, count me as a guy who has faith but can't see that winning a victory. I think I got it about right. I think it will be a field goal. I think it'll be a 27-24, whatever, Georgia at the last minute. I think if we see that, again, not in favor of moral victories, but to see the progress of the program and to finish off the season with 8 wins, if they can do that, it's a good year. So I'm going to go with that. I'll just say 27-24 Georgia over Florida. Wish I could say more, but that's the best I got tonight. And unless I change my mind over the weekend, I will let you know if I do. Tomorrow it is going to be our Orange and Blue Bloods with Ben Troop, France Beard, Lord Meadows and the gang. And then, of course, Friday, Urban Meyer Jones, the program for the best Fridays in football. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow night on The Buddy Martin Show.